粵語郭文貴67，今次閻麗夢繼續分析好多樣嘢，目錄就喺度，時間有限就揀嚟聽啦。當然聽晒最好啦。我又循例讀一次咯。嗰啲權勢又用錯嘅數據，又用語言藝術禁咗研究經六葵。然後當有人提出嚟嘅時候，佢又反過嚟要求你嚴謹驗證。但係即使至今仲未有雙盲實驗，閻麗夢都係繼續為呢隻 hydroxychloroquine 平反嘅。佢仲話重症先至有油水撈，所以平藥幾有效都好，啲友總係要阻止佢得到驗證。講到世衛派人去北京，話要走去武漢調查，閻麗夢就話佢哋夾粉創作下一輪謊言啫嘛。因為佢哋以為喺中國洗腦就可以謊言治國，咁對世界洗下腦都可以謊言欺世嘅咯。最後係講鐵證如山，同埋下一隻病毒會更加難對付。好啦，去片。
But sir, you know, now it's very important time. It's the major time. Truth is the king. This is why Dr. Yan and Mr. Hao Haidong and the wife, that's hero. The hero, really hero, brother. You look today, you are in war room. Everybody, trying to give the comment. In war room, Dr. Yan say the truth. High drugs, not it's the how can I say? This is the medicine, right? Not is can solve the problem, but can help you, right?
This is the power of the
not a cure, not a cure,
but a prophylaxis.
不是解药，但能帮你。
This is the power of the new China and the young people coming out of China is that Dr. Yan has done as much as some of the great doctors here, Dr. Risch, Dr. Vliet, Dr. Zelenko, to push actually out there the truth to the American people. I'm here the first time to announce on Thursday from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock, we're going to have a national town hall on War Room, and Dr. Yan is going to be part of it with Dr. Risch, Dr. Zelenko, Dr. Vliet, and a whole bunch of others with hundreds of thousands of Americans tying in to have them walk through the case for hydroxy. And that's what's so powerful about Dr. Yan. Not only did she come out of Hong Kong University to talk to us about the CCP virus, but as importantly, she's here walking through hydroxy, not as a miracle cure. She doesn't make that statement. She says, hey, for an emergency use authorization, it is absolutely useful as a prophylactic before you get it. And she's had a very powerful voice. So we want to thank everybody associated with helping Dr. Yan get her freedom. But that shows you what young people in China can do when put on a world stage. I mean, Dr. Yan is a superhero here in America right now. We call her Captain Marvel. She's a superhero.
现在呢，就班德先生说Dr. Yan的这个咱们的科英雄科学家在西方引起的影响，他真的就是一个中国人的新形象。
Let's get Dr. Yan from Hong Kong University. Let's get her response right now to the what do you call hydrocolloids? The complete barrage, the complete barrage by the medical establishment, people on the task force. I'd like to hear what Dr. Yan thinks.
Good morning, Mr.
Dr.
Bannon.
Yan, why don't you take us away? Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So listen to such clips and also listen to Dr. Zelenko and Dr. Li. I think everyone can make their own judgment. Just use your common sense. Yeah, let's talk about science, talk about clinical trial, talk about golden standard. I think Dr. Fauci just mentioned golden standard, right? Here, I think the golden standard should be honest, should be straightforward. Let's say hydroxychloroquine. Based on the clinical trials, there are many good clinical trials already show the effect of prevention and also early treatment to COVID-19. But why these high position people like Dr. Fauci or some CDC authorities, they don't admit this, and they use their word to even try to humiliate this, like the Henry Ford Institute, those kind of study. They try to humiliate it. And also, they just like those poor quality ones, like overdose use of hydroxychloroquine in the patient, or use some fake data clinical trial, which is published even in Lancet, and WHO quickly cited it to cancel all the clinical trial for HCQ, and then later that paper was withdrawn. So these are the basement for not recommend the HCQ. And back to say now the situation is very emergency, right? Every minute people get infected. Every minute people get dead. So imagine these are the people around you. It's yourself, it's your family, it's your friend. How could you let such a safe long-term use drug be ignored just because those authorities not admit they're effective? But from back to the first-line doctors, like Dr. Zelenko, like many other doctors, like Dr. Stella, like many doctors who signed a letter to us to use the HCQ, they see the real effect on patient. And the first-line medical staffs always the ones face the highest risk in this kind of pandemic. They want to save people. They also need to protect themselves. These songs are ignored, filtered from the ear of those high-level authorities. They use their position.
Doctor, I just want to jump in with a question here. You're absolutely right. I just want to make sure that we cover everything. We're going to hold you over to the next segment as well, if that's okay with you. But we've got about 1 minute left here in this segment. I want to ask you this question because we've become accustomed to the media and the task force, the doctors, shifting the goalposts time and time again when it comes to this pandemic. Changing the rules, changing the length of times, changing the quarantine rules, all of that. Is Dr. Fauci changing the goalpost when he talks about randomized controlled placebo trials when the FDA documents themselves state very clearly may be effective? Dr. Yan.
Yeah, this is something they always change. Actually, what I want to stress is in the emergency use, they should not only keep play on words, and they should think about even for vaccine study. Now they skip some very critical steps, right? Because it's emergency use. Dr. Fauci is playing on the word, and also they now cannot deny the HCQ is useful drug. So they start to play on words that it's not effective, you cannot use, just because they are afraid of the emergency use is occupied by HCQ, not by some other huge benefit behind new drugs.
Dr. Yan, I just want to ask you this one question before I hand it over to Jack Maxey here in the studio. But I wanted to ask you this. The Chinese Communist Party and the upper echelons of the Chinese Communist Party are very clear and very braggadocious and boastful about the fact that they do not have a high level of contamination of COVID-19 of their most senior party members. Is that somehow related to hydroxychloroquine?
Yes, exactly. According to my intelligence, exactly. They are using it for prevention even back to end of December. Remember, at that time, no one in the world even knows there is a new unknown pneumonia called COVID-19. And also what I want to stress is since 29 January 2020, the Dr. Moore, through the oldest YouTube broadcast, the first time in the world delivers a message to Chinese audience that hydroxychloroquine can be used to prevent and also for early treatment for the COVID-19 based on the scientific evidence. We really had a lot of feedback from our audience. They use it in such pandemic in China back to early this year. You should remember, right? Crazy time. But those people who listen to it and buy the drug and also recommend it to people around them, they did get saved. We had a lot of feedback. So this is quite effective drug.
Doctor, it's Jack. I have a question about the World Health Organization and the ending of these double-blind studies that Fauci et al., all of them want to see these studies. But when the Lancet article came out with the bad data that was rescinded, that the FDA used to change their criteria, didn't also over 25 different studies, many of them funded by the World Health Organization around the world, that were midstream studying the effectiveness of HCQ as an early treatment, all of those got canceled. All of the data was destroyed. All of the, you can't restart a study after 2 weeks on after it's been stopped. When you stop it, it's stopped. So in actual fact, this actually kept us from moving forward in the discovery of hydroxychloroquine. Wouldn't you say that that is true?
Yes. So this is a big loss for the human being society to know how effective the hydroxychloroquine will be. And also, I really want to stress it. Now, SARS-CoV-2 is the new version of the virus pathogen you never seen in human history, which can induce quite a lot of damage to humans' global health and also economic. Meanwhile, the desperately hunting for HCQ is also the first time in humans' history. This is a drug for over 20 years recommended by WHO in their safest drug list for even children. And now they try to stop people to use it. And now they try to stop all the different type of the data come from the first line of the doctors who really can reflect the result of HCQ for prevention and treatment. We see there are many countries like India, like Egypt, like Indonesia, they applied HCQ. This is cheap, this is useful. See their mortality is quite low, right? Why cannot we use it in US? For what? I think the only reason is because HCQ is a big problem for many people to use their funding for their study to develop the new benefit drugs or vaccine in the future. They cannot let HCQ, this kind of cheap, safe drug, stay here, which will make the public not expect for the new studies, but they will just turn to this drug to use it to help themselves.
Dr. Yan, so I'm going to try and explain for the audience. What we're talking about is if you are a professional researcher, seeking out funding for your research is, the mother's milk of your entire career. And the reality is nobody is sending out any research grants to study HCQ, but they are sending out research grants to study potential vaccines. Now, to put this in perspective for our audience, if we treated every single American with hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin, that would come out to a cost of roughly $6 billion at $20 a dosage. The United States government, according to the New York Times on July 31st, has already invested more than $8 billion in vaccine development. This is through various big pharma private enterprise projects. So you begin to understand that there is a lot of money at stake here. And I see a lot of parallels actually here between the banning of DDT and the banning of hydroxychloroquine. And in both cases, it was for the profits of patented alternatives that weren't really even as effective. It's horrifying to me, Doctor.
Yes, so let me explain this to you. Let's say what they recommend now. Now they recommend steroid and remdesivir. These are the drugs for the severe cases patient. And so they leave the early stage of treatment and also prevention stage as empty. So that's why they can donate a lot of money. This is a very reasonable thing, right? If you don't have things can be cope with the COVID-19 at early stage and as prevention, you have to put a lot of money to the new industry for the vaccine, for new drugs, right? But if you admit HCQ can be the one to use applied in the early stage and the prevention, then those funding should turn to HCQ more than the others because first, it's already established as a safe drug, and also for mechanism is just according to the situation in COVID-19, like cytokine storm, like how the virus replication in humans' body, this HCQ can be applied to focus against this pathology. So if you turn to HCQ, money donate to HCQ study, then it will be cheaper and also it's more difficult for the pharmacy, for industry, for institute to apply the grant to do the new study. They have to put more solid evidence to persuade the funding committee to give them money. I can tell you based on my own story that back to this February, even in Hong Kong, the government gave the emergency grant. Oh yeah, it comes from Bill Gates Foundation too. So there is a huge amount of money come to us. Basically, you just write something, show you are research in vaccine, in virology. You can do something to try to find the vaccine. Then you get big amount of money. This will give you reputation. It can help you get promotion. This is basically the money are hating you. Do you understand this? So who will turn to HCQ in that case and give up the funding things? So that is a very sad truth.
Dr. Yan, I want to bring Steve in here. I know he's got a couple of questions for you just before we break. We've got about 3.5 minutes here, Steve.
Yeah, I never like to stop diatribes when a brilliant doctor, research is beating up Bill Gates and the Gates Foundation. But I want to go into another topic, Doctor, and we'd like to have you stay over for the next segment. The guys will probably run that interview. It's getting a little windy here, but look, they just announced yesterday WHO is negotiating with the CCP on terms of getting into these labs. They were actually in Beijing negotiating this. This is, what, 7 months, 8 months into this pandemic. WHO with Tedros, the running dog of the CCP, is over there heading up a negotiation, and they don't reach any kind of conclusion. In fact, he says, hey, we never may find a silver bullet. What he's trying to signal is that they're not going to get to the bottom of this. What I'd like to ask you is, why is WHO, why have we allowed the World Health Organization to take the lead here when, as you saw up close and personal in Hong Kong, they're part of the problem? The President of the United States should say 72 hours to turn over every document, 72 hours to make every scientist available, every email, every text message, every gain-of-function experiment. And if he doesn't, if it's not turned over immediately, they ought to start sanctioning individuals at the top of the scale, from General Secretary Xi to Wang Qishan, all the way down to sanction the banks, stop the U.S. dollar. We got to stop playing games. And what's not on page 20 of the New York Times, because they won't make it the lead story, the WHO is making no progress 8 months into this, into getting into the Wuhan lab. So, Dr. Yan, I'd like to turn it back over to you, and Raheem, I want to bring it back after the break.
So because the WHO now what they can do, they have lied about to collaborate with CCP and organize reviewed by us, right? So now they have to negotiate for the next step of the lie. That's what they can do. See, their zoonotic origin things also failed because we revealed the truth on time. So what they can do, we cannot trust WHO now. They already lost their credibility, and there are a lot of benefits behind it. I know I have a lot of evidence. It's like how prophylactic Paris try to manipulate them and do the same thing as CCP wants them to do. This is how WHO behaved. We have seen it for half a year already, right? And also, now the WHO try to let people thought there is no silver bullet. So they want to deliver the panic to people. One hand, they want you to start HCQ, this kind of drug. It cannot be used. The other hand, they tell you, say, we still don't have the way to solve it. And this panic will let people lose their hope. And also this kind of panic will let the government try to lock down again and keep people at home. This will definitely ruin the economy.
Dr. Yan, we're very grateful for your contributions to this show, and really your contributions to humanity so far in the last couple of weeks that we've got to know you here. I want to throw it back over to Jack Maxey in just a second. Before I do, just once again want to understand, Dr. Yan, this whole WHO CCP link that's here with the WHO. I mean, is it a real negotiation to get into any of the labs, to any of the facilities? Does the CCP really even have to block that hard? Just explain to us the dynamic here, because for a lot of the Western audiences watching this, it looks like the WHO is completely and utterly useless, completely feckless organization, not worth being a part of, not worth investing in. A lot of Americans want refunds for the decades that they've been a part of this already. What is exactly the dynamic between the World Health Organization and the Chinese Communist Party, Dr. Yan?
Okay, simply I can tell you that first, I have been stay under the control of CCP government for over 30 years. So basically, I know it more than most of the Western peoples. And we know how the CCP government can control the voice from the authorities. Once they control the authorities, those people will use their professional positions and use their titles to let people trust them. And once these people listen to CCP, they can deliver whatever message the CCP government want you to believe. Now it has been shown the big success in China because their propaganda, because of their enforcement, they can also almost control most of the people. I mean, 1.4 billion Chinese people has to listen to them. Now this is just the same thing is applied to overseas, to Western countries. So for this purpose, they need to use the international organization like WHO. I don't need to show more evidence. I think everyone can say from back to December 2019, how their response, I mean, from WHO to this COVID-19 outbreak, to January, February, March, all these things. They've been to China even before, right? And they have been to China even last week. What did they say? And what can they say? Everything listened to the Ministry of the Foreign in China, Foreign Affairs in China. So I think the negotiation, yeah, it may exist, but the negotiation is to negotiate the benefit between WHO and CCP government. And then later they will sit down to talk about what to tell people, whether this is really from some bad, from even one belt, one road countries, and or maybe this is some poor animals they suddenly caught in Wuhan, or this may be some leakage from some lab in China. Come on, these are all the things you may see in the next steps. So these are their negotiations. I think everyone should start to justify it based on whether WHO has its credibility.
Doctor, I want to just re-illustrate what you said. Essentially, the World Health Organization was involved in the first lie, right? The idea that this was not communicable human to human. They knew about it at a minimum at December 31st from the Free Chinese in Taiwan. So what you are saying essentially is that this current negotiation between the World Health Organization and the Communist Party to investigate the source of this virus is really a negotiation to perfect the second lie. Am I getting that correctly?
They try to perfect, but you know the lies can never be perfect. I can show you something. Remember, I have mentioned the scientific report I and my team prepared for. Now I can show you some photos. I think WHO expert like Dr. Fauci, like CCP, they can remember this photo because later this whole report will be published to all the people. They can read it. They can see what exactly the SARS-CoV-2 virus is, whether it is come from nature or maybe it's more easy. You can get it from the lab. Just need to have the PLA-owned Zhoushan bat coronavirus. And also based on this, WHO has already covered numerous lies for CCP. And I remember there is a funny thing. So at the end of February, WHO have sent some experts to Wuhan, did some investigation and published a paper. Published some documents that they really think Chinese government did a good thing in anti-COVID-19. But even in that document, they dare not to admit Xi Jinping's RATG13 virus. That document on WHO's website also points out that COVID-19, SARS-CoV-2, actually is most close origin from the Zhoushan bat virus.
So you're saying that the closest related virus to this is a virus that is in the catalog of viruses in the possession of the People's Liberation Army that they took from a bat. And this is highly indicative that perhaps this COVID-19 that we are all suffering under, the CCP virus, originated in gain of function or some manipulation inside a PLA-controlled lab, perhaps the one in Wuhan?
Yeah, I think it can be in PLA's any lab because PLA owns so many labs. It's not has to be specifically even in Wuhan. It also can be in Hong Kong. It also can be in Harbin, in Shanghai, in any labs if they want you to do it because it's controlled by PLA. And yes, for gain the function research, I think Dr. Fauci know it more than me, how they approve those gain of function research funding to those Chinese labs under CCP's control.
There's also, Doctor, a real belief throughout Western science that oftentimes Western scientists who have a rogue path that they want to follow for scientific research, gain of function being one of those, it's highly restricted here in the United States and much of the West, that they take their money and their ideas to Chinese laboratories where there are lower standards, less stringent standards concerning what kinds of research can be done. Can you talk to a little bit about that, about how Western doctors use the Chinese system to engage in scientific discovery that probably they would not be allowed to do at Harvard?
I think there is one more very well-known cases, which is Dr. He Jiankui in 2018 did some gene editing baby test in China. This kind of experiment is never allowed in overseas countries. And actually in China, it should also be stopped too, but somehow they can do it because it's like the government know it and they pretend they don't know it and let him did that. And also we even can see from the Science journal, they have write the article later to show actually there are potential links between American scientists, even some Nobel laureates, to get involved into Dr. He Jiankui's study. So this is a very typical and well-known example for how the research can do something which is not allowed, but actually you can do it in China. And I can say I'm the one who stayed in that conference at that time and also asked questions from Dr. He Jiankui, so I know the whole story.
Do you know what's frightening about this, Doctor? There's a historical example of this for the world that they can listen to. The experiments done by the Nazi regime that did not meet any kind of moral or ethical standards. Some of this science that was looked into by, and I use science in quotation marks, in some of the death camps. And this idea, I believe you're referencing the study that came out a few months ago where they were putting actually human genes inside monkey embryos. Is this the one they were going to try and determine whether or not it changed the intelligence of the monkeys? It's kind of frightening in so many levels.
Yes, they want to do all these type of things, and because back to the CCP government, they tell people don't have any religion. You just need to believe in your Chinese Communist Party. So whatever they want to do should be the thing you can do. That's why people lose their religion, lose their faith, and so they don't trust that something you should not do, which will give you the bad consequence. They just do it for some big benefits, and also the government want people to do it to get huge things behind it, like do the genome editing baby to see how the gene editing can be done in human being, like do the gain the function research. You can see how powerful the virus can be. And yeah, this virus really has done something, right? How it influenced the global health, how it destroyed the economics, right? It really did something.
So, Doctor, we have only about a minute and a half here before we go to the break. Do you believe that the world needs to hold the Chinese Communist Party responsible for what has happened?
Of course, because I just want to remind our audience one thing. When I was in the virus lab, when we try to do no matter vaccine or viral function testing, when we do the virus replication or something, we never just make one type of virus. We make a lot of string of virus at stock. And then later we will test their function, test their characters, and then keep something we thought maybe not that useful, not optimal at this moment for the later use. So just imagine this virus is not come from nature. This is lab modified. Whether they would only make the only one specific virus strain, as you know, use the common sense, I'm sure people will understand it. So if you let it go, later even HCQ vaccine cannot work.
Dr. Yan, we're very grateful for your time and all the great work you and your colleagues are doing. We're going to go to a quick break now.
大家看到现在就疯狂了，在向全世界输送病毒啊！全世界这些流氓国家都想在共产党的合作，幫我建 P3實驗室。
又到尾聲，請你做齊1、2、3、4、5啊！即係補看、點讚、留言、廣傳、訂閱、參考、閱讀。多謝晒，拜拜。